about 62. Pam and Joanne will typically just keep adding them as they come in if you want to.
That's fine.
If Eleanor's ready, and I think we're ready to go to begin.
Eleanor, ready? Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. My name is Richard Pomerantz, Chair of Westtown Township's Board of Supervisors. My board colleagues, Carol DeWolf, Vice Chair, and Scott Yaw, Police Commissioner, and I want to welcome you and thank you for being here for this latest conditional use hearing. It goes without saying again, but deserves to be acknowledged each time, that conducting this conditional use hearing in this manner is by definition unusual, and at times may be awkward. Let there be no doubt that the virtual hearing is neither the preference of the board nor frankly of the applicant. However, after months of delay and a change to the law, it is the applicant's legal prerogative, and at this point necessity, to put a halt to further delaying the process in the hopes the pandemic improves to permit indoor gatherings. Consequently, we will and are proceeding as best as we can given the circumstances. For those who have your calendars available, I know many of you want to know when the next meeting will be. After tonight, it will be November 17th. Finally, before turning the proceedings over to Township Solicitor Pat McKenna, I will lead off with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pat.
Thank you, Dick. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the continuation of the conditional use hearing from September 14th, 2020. The Township is recording the hearing this evening for the purposes of assisting the court reporter to complete the transcript. The recording will not be maintained once the transcript is completed. In addition, I've been advised that an area resident, Mindy Rhodes, is also video recording the proceeding tonight. As with all of the prior hearings, the proceeding this evening will mirror as closely as possible the process for an in-person hearing. The applicant will present testimony from 2 or 3 witnesses tonight, including soils, sanitary sewer, and engineering, depending on how much time is available this evening. All parties and the board will have a chance to ask questions of the witnesses. You will be recognized and unmuted when your name is called. If you're on the phone, press 9 to raise your hand, then press star 6. Press star 9 to raise your hand, then press star 6 to unmute yourself if you're on the phone. The exhibits will be shown on the screen as the witnesses testify. The exhibits are also on the Township's website for your reference. If the witnesses do not finish, they will continue at the next hearing, which, as the chairman noted, is scheduled for November 17th at 7 p.m. via Zoom. All the participants and parties should have the ability to enter your names on the Zoom call. Please take the time to do so that we may properly identify you, if you have not already done so. Zoom is a great program. It works well, but sometimes there is a delay when people are speaking on the program. As such, please wait until the person is done speaking before you begin speaking, so as not to speak over him or her and create confusion for the court reporter. Please make sure you are in a quiet location, and please speak up so that all can hear you. As mentioned previously, public comment for non-parties will commence at a future hearing date at the conclusion of the evidentiary proceedings by the parties. We don't know when that is yet, but you will be given notice of that in advance. Please mute yourself tonight when you're not speaking so that we don't have extraneous sound in the background for the hearing. Other than Mindy Rhodes, is anyone else recording the hearing this evening? If you are, please raise your hand so we can recognize you. Not seeing anyone with their hands raised. We intend to take a short break around 8 p.m. for the sake of the court reporter, and as before, we intend to conclude as close to 9 p.m. as we can, depending upon where we are in the testimony this evening. So with that, unless anyone has anything further, Mr. Edelman, I'm going to turn it over to you to present your witnesses for this evening.
Thank you, Pat. Good evening. This evening, I'd like to call first Mr. Paul Scott to testify, and I believe Eleanor was here if he could be sworn.
Mr. Scott, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Scott. If you could, for the record, please state your full name and business address.
Paul Scott, 3445-A Box Hill Corporate Center Drive, Abingdon, Maryland, 21009, Geotechnology Associates.
Okay. Mr. Scott, I put up on the screen here what was previously marked as Exhibit A16. Is this a copy of your resume or curriculum vitae?
It is.
Okay, and are you a licensed or registered professional geologist in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania?
I am.
I'd like to ask the board to accept Mr. Scott as an expert in geology and hydrogeology. I believe he was previously qualified and accepted as such an expert in the prior conditional use hearing. He, of course, is willing to answer any questions you may have with respect to his qualifications. Yeah.
Greg, just one more time, an expert in what area? I'm sorry.
Geology and hydrogeology, which is really a subset of geology.
Right, he was accepted previously, so we'll accept him again as an expert.
Great, thank you very much. Mr. Scott, by way of background, could you please refresh the board's recollection as to what your involvement is in Toll Brothers' proposed development?
Sure. In a nutshell, we've been involved in the soil evaluations for wastewater disposal, also hydrogeologic evaluation for the same for feasibility purposes, and also geotechnical evaluation on a feasibility basis and stormwater infiltration.
Okay. And I'd like to direct your attention to what was previously marked as Exhibit A14. If we could put that up on the screen. And this is previously identified as GTA's August 11, 2016 preliminary geotechnical report. Are you familiar with this exhibit?
Yes.
And were you involved in the preparation of this geotechnical report?
Yes.
Okay. And at the prior conditional use hearing on the first application, did you testify about this geotechnical report?
I did.
Okay. And are you aware that subsequent to the first application, Toll Brothers has slightly modified its conditional use plan for this application?
Yes.
Okay. And did GTA perform soils testing with respect to this application?
We did.
And what was the purpose of performing that soils testing?
For both geotechnical evaluation for construction purposes, roads, buildings, etc., but stormwater management infiltration testing as well.
Okay. Did you also test the soils on the property for wastewater disposal?
We did.
Okay. And what areas of the property did GTA test?
Really throughout the property. The stormwater management infiltration testing was north, south, east, west, central. The wastewater disposal was all of those except, I believe, the southwest.
Okay. And did you or GTA perform more recent testing as a result of the modified conditional use site plan?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to show you what I've marked as Exhibit A60. If you could pull that up, please. And I believe this is a copy of a letter from GTA dated September 10th, 2020. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And what is this exhibit? What does it entail?
It is a summary of all of the infiltration, stormwater management infiltration testing that EA has done at the site over a 4-year period.
Okay. And as a result of the testing, what did you determine or conclude regarding the soils on the property?
Soils are suitable generally for infiltration from stormwater management facilities.
Okay. And will there be additional soils testing later on in the development process?
Yes,
And that would be done in connection with the finalizing of the stormwater design and engineering, is that correct?
that's correct.
And generally, what governmental entity or entities will review the soils testing for the stormwater?
The state, Soil Conservation District, and the township.
Okay. If we move on to wastewater disposal testing, I'd like to show you what was previously marked as Exhibit A8, which is an October 11, 2016 letter from GTA. What was this letter regarding, Mr. Scott?
This was on-site wastewater disposal feasibility, as the title indicates there.
Okay, and I'd like to also show you Exhibit A17 that was previously marked. And this is a March 2017 report. Again, is this dealing with on-site wastewater feasibility?
It is.
Okay, did you prepare both the October 11, 2016 letter and the March 2017 report?
Yes.
With respect to wastewater disposal, what did you previously conclude in the first application based on your testing and analysis?
Soil conditions, groundwater, hydrogeologic conditions are suitable generally for proposed wastewater disposal, which is via drip irrigation.
Okay. And as a result of the modifications to the current conditional use site plan, did you conduct additional wastewater disposal testing?
We did.
I'd like to show you what I've marked as Exhibit A61. And this is a copy of GTA's letter dated August 9, 2019. What does this letter entail?
There was some additional soils testing for wastewater disposal feasibility that was done due to some modifications in the plan. And we provided our results of that, which indicated that those areas were suitable also.
Okay, I'd like to show you what I've marked as Exhibit A62. And this is another copy of a letter from GTA dated February 20, 2020. Again, what does this letter cover?
Similar to what I just said for the previous report, additional testing due to changes in the plan to evaluate some additional areas.
Okay, and you prepared both of these letters, correct?
We did. I did.
What additional areas on the property did you test?
In concert with both of those reports, it ranged from the east, central, northeast, as I recall, and also the southeast portion.
And what did the testing reveal in terms of suitability for wastewater disposal?
It indicated that the soils that we observed were suitable for wastewater disposal by drip irrigation.
Okay. And now this is preliminary testing, correct?
It is.
What additional testing further on in the development process would Toll need to do, and what additional analysis would they need to conduct?
It will be substantial. The DEP will need to be engaged, and there's a process that we will go through, and it will include additional soil test pits, soil profile evaluation, infiltration testing, installation of wells, drilling of borings, conducting more hydraulic testing of the wells, and performance of mounding analysis through computer modeling, preparation of a design report.
Okay, and what approvals would be required from the governmental agencies?
DEP would review and we would go through the approval process with them.
Okay, and would that be for sewage planning and permitting?
Yes, 537 and also ultimately a water quality management permit will be required.
Would the applicant be required by the regulations under DEP to use some form of approved wastewater treatment?
Absolutely, yes.
And similarly, would they be required under DEP's regulations to use some approved method of wastewater disposal?
Yes.
And typically, when would the wastewater system be fully designed and engineered?
As I understand, at the time of the preliminary plan approval.
Okay. is there adequate disposal area to accommodate the anticipated wastewater to be generated by the proposed development?
Based on our evaluation, there is, yes.
And just generally, based on your preliminary analysis, do you have an opinion as to whether on-site wastewater disposal system is feasible for this project?
Yes, my opinion is it is feasible.
I have no further questions for Mr. Scott.
All right, thank you, Mr. Edelman. We'll go through our party list. Ms. Camp for the Westtown Planning Commission.
Thank you. The only question I have is two clarification points. I thought I heard Mr. Edelman refer to Exhibit A60 as a letter dated September 10th. My first sheet of Exhibit A60 doesn't have a date, but on the subsequent pages it's dated September 4th. So I just want to make clear it is dated September 4th.
I'm not sure I had it as September 10th, but
Your table of contents for your exhibit listed as September 4th.
You are correct. That letter, I believe, does not unfortunately have a date on the first page, but the date that is shown on the subsequent pages is the date of the report.
okay, so let the record reflect that it's September 4, not September 10.
Okay, just want to make sure we're all dealing with the same report. Thank you. And in that same report, you have plans attached, test plan A and test plan B. And I don't know much about how you go about labeling your pit locations of the testing, but it looks like on the north side of the property where the townhomes are proposed along West Pleasant Grove, there are two test pit locations that are labeled the same, TP4-04. Is that just a labeling error? Can you see there's one on the right-hand side and one on the very left-hand side? They're both labeled TP4-04. Yeah. And then, yep.
It would appear that one of those should be 03. So yes,
Okay. But that doesn't affect any of your testimony. I just was...
it doesn't. They were
Okay.
both suitable locations.
Okay. Let me see. That's all? Nothing further on the substance of your testimony. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Camp. Mark Thompson for Neighbors for Crebilly.
I don't have any questions about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. How about Kathy Labrum for Thornbury Township?
No questions for Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Kathy. Frone Crawford for Birmingham Township.
Thank you. No questions either.
Thank you, Frone. Anyone for the Westchester Area School District? I don't know if Mr. Scanlon's on or someone else, Mr. Bevilacqua maybe. I don't know if we have anyone.
Yeah, this is Gary. I'm on. I have no questions for the school board.
Okay, and I'm going to assume also for the West Glen HOA.
That's correct. No questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bevilacqua. Mr. Spackman for the Thornbury Farm Trust. Is Mr. Spackman on? Not hearing him, so we're going to move on. Brandywine at Thornbury HOA. Mr. Karakoff. Brandywine at Thornbury HOA. All right, moving on to Mr. McFalls, Westminster Presbyterian Church. I'm not seeing Mr. McFalls on, so we'll move on. The Quarry Swimming Association, Mr. Bunkowski.
Mr. Bonkowski is not here, but I'm the president of the Quarry Association. If I could ask a question.
Can you identify yourself, please?
Richard Hurst,
Spell your last name for me, please.
Hurst.
And you're the president of the association?
Correct.
Go ahead, Mr. Hurst.
Just a couple of questions. Mr. Scott, you're working for Toll Brothers. Is this the first job you've done for them?
No.
Are you pretty much the regular person for doing this kind of work for Toll Brothers?
GTA does various types of geotechnical and stormwater work in different offices depending on where Toll Brothers is working. In this particular area, when there's a wastewater issue, I would say yes.
And then you were talking about a drip irrigation system. I believe Radley Run runs through that property. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
And are those spray fields anywhere near Radley Run? I don't have a map, so I can't.
You have to look at it. I mean, generally, there are buffers that are instituted, and there are many restrictions if you're getting it runoff and that kind of thing. That it's very conservatively designed so that the water will either infiltrate or evaporate. So the potential for that water to move across the ground to the stream is non-existent, in my opinion.
Well, you were saying that the ground is suitable. For layman's, in the layman's terms, can you kind of explain what you mean by suitable?
Sure. There has to be certain properties like texture. So if you have a sandier material, obviously it's going to allow water to move more easily through it. If you have a clay, a very thick or dense clay, it's not. So we look at the texture of the materials. Generally, the soils that are out there are categorized as Glen Elg or Chester, which are generally pretty good. And for drip irrigation, the systems are pretty diffuse, relatively diffuse. In other words, they're spread out over a large area, and the tubes that infiltrate the water, they have a relatively low amount that goes in, per square foot. So combined with the way this thing is designed and we observed out there, those are a couple of the indications that they're suitable to me.
Good, thank you.
Thanks, sir. The Radley Run 3 HOA, Preeti Pinto. Radley Run 3 HOA. Arborview HOA, Mr. Hoffman or someone else. Anyone for the Arborview HOA? Okay. Anyone for Westtown Village LP, Gadaletto Seafood? Okay, moving on. Robert Dahl. Mr. Dahl, do you have any questions? Not seeing Mr. Dahl on tonight. Moving on to Leonard Mamakari. Is Mr. Mamakari on tonight? How about Philip or Susan Jones? Philip or Susan Jones? Deanna Lararis. Ms. Lararis, are you on? Not hearing anyone. Edwin or Lagita Boyer?
No questions at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Boyer.
You're welcome.
David or Catherine Prize? David or Catherine Prize. All right, moving on to Jennifer Kramer. I believe Ms. Kramer is on tonight.
Yes, no questions at this time.
Thank you. Denny or Patty McFadden? Denny or Patty McFadden? How about Carol Weller?
Yes. Is it the only testimony that we're having for the stormwater runoff, or is there going to be further testimony later?
This gentleman didn't testify to stormwater, he testified to soils. There will be a witness who will testify with respect to stormwater.
Okay, and then one other question. So we're still talking about possibly doing wastewater and management on the site rather than tapping into the Westtown facility?
That's correct, but there will be some testimony with respect to that.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, ma'am. William Worth.
Yes, can you hear me?
I can, sir. Go ahead.
I have no immediate questions for tonight. I certainly respect all your hard work, the township's hard work in this whole matter.
Thank you, Mr. Worth. Appreciate that. Bob Williman. Mr. Williman on tonight. Not hearing from Mr. Williman. How about Linda Miller?
I have no questions at this time.
Thank you, ma'am. Ellen Steele? I see Miss Steele listed. Ma'am, do you have any questions tonight?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Victor or Carly Malatesta? Are the Malatestas on? Not hearing anyone. How about David or Iris Berger? Berger. No, the Berger's on. How about Karen Grime?
I have no questions at this time, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. How about Steve Ernie? Is Steve Ernie on tonight?
No.
How about Eve Herrick?
No.
All right. Anthony Simkovich.
Yes. He is muted.
I'll do it again. Hear me now?
We can. Thank you.
Okay. What is the soil composition of Crebilly Farms, and is it similar to the surrounding area, or is there anything unique about it?
I wouldn't say it's unique. I'd say it's probably similar generally. There's a good bit of kind of a silty sand, I would say, with some rock fragments in it. Typical soils. Yeah.
No further questions.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Fenton Mejia. I believe he is on tonight.
I have no questions at this time.
Thank you. Nicholas Bonkowski is not here this evening, so we'll skip him. Dr. Cecilia Wright? Or Mr. Vosberg?
No questions this time either.
Was that you, Mr. Vosberg?
Yes, it is. No questions from either of us.
Thank you. Richard Hurst or Suzanne Kruger?
Just one question. Mr. Scott, you said you did a lot of work for Toll Brothers. Have you ever provided a report that said it wasn't good to put a drip field in an area where they wanted to develop?
Objection. It's beyond the scope of his testimony.
Sir, can you repeat your question for me?
I was just wondering if he said he did a lot of work for Toll Brothers. I was just wondering if he ever provided a report that said it wasn't good to put a drip field or similar geologic requirements.
I would allow it as to the credibility of the witness is what I assume that the question is going towards. So if he can answer.
No offense, I'm just interested.
Go ahead. Go ahead, sir.
I can't say whether it's a Toll Brothers specifically, but we do a lot of soil evaluation. I've been doing this for, excuse me, I guess 20 years, something like that. So frequently, we do our best, or I should say all the time, we do our best to find materials that are good and try to make a project work. But I've seen several locations in a site or sites that have been bad. And, I have my own reputation, so I'm not going to tell somebody, go put a system in there and then it fails a year later. That doesn't look very good for me. So, if I see something that doesn't work, I tell my clients to avoid it. But certainly we try to make things work.
Thank you.
Yep, sure.
Thomas Martin or Renee Rockwood?
So, Mr. Scott, one question for you. Your testimony was that the soil is generally acceptable for stormwater, wastewater runoff, I believe is approximately what you had said.
Well, infiltration for stormwater and wastewater disposal feasibility subsurface was more to the point.
Okay. So if you're saying it's generally acceptable, does that mean that there's an appreciable portion of the property that is not acceptable?
I wouldn't use that adjective, but there are certainly locations that I would not recommend to put wastewater, like right next to a stream, where conditions are indicated should not be suitable based on state standards. But generally speaking, the materials that we viewed looked suitable.
Okay, so there are other parts of the property that perhaps where you didn't test where the materials could be unsuitable.
Well, really, most of the property was tested in one way or another. I mean, we didn't just look at what we did, for example, for wastewater. We also looked at the geotechnical borings. There was, I can't remember how many, 50 to 100, somewhere in there. They were all throughout the site. So I would say, much more of the site appears to be suitable from a soil thickness, a texture standpoint, a depth to groundwater standpoint than doesn't.
Okay. Is there a sense of what percentage of the property is unsuitable?
We only looked at the areas, I can really only testify to the areas that we that are proposed for wastewater disposal. So to put a percentage on it wouldn't be appropriate.
Okay. Do you know if Toll Brothers has plans to do any kind of work relevant to that outside of the areas that you tested?
I do not.
Okay. So there is a chance that perhaps they will do that kind of work outside of the area you test, and we don't know its suitability.
I strongly doubt it. Wherever a system is proposed is going to have to meet state requirements, DEP requirements, and it's going to have to be fully and thoroughly evaluated.
Okay. No, I understand. I don't really trust Troll's intentions, so your doubt is I don't necessarily trust that they've made you fully aware of their intentions. But thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions, Mr. Martin?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay. James or Susan Mutter?
They're not on.
Okay. Ann or John Hellion?
I'm on.
Oh my.
Okay, let's do one at a time. Who may have questions, please?
I have one. John, are you okay if I go first?
I have no questions, so you ask yours.
All right. Do you have any idea of the extent to which any blasting is going to have to take place that might disturb underground streams or any kind of geological formations in the development of the property?
I don't.
Does that mean you don't know, or that you haven't found any?
I'm sorry. That's outside of my expertise and testimony.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who would be testifying to that?
No.
On either side?
Well, we don't
Okay.
intend to call that type of testimony.
Can I speak to the township managers? Is there any way we could check on that? Because that possible disturbance because of all the creeks that are running in there is a concern of mine.
Well, ma'am, I don't know until the other parties present their case. And the
Okay.
township's not presenting the case. The planning commission may touch on that. I don't know, but we'll find out as we go through the process.
All right, thank you very much.
Of course. How about Myron or Sharon Grubaugh?
Neither Sharon nor I have any questions at this time. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. David Teal?
No questions at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Teal. And then Patrick McDonough. Is Patrick McDonough on?
He's not on.
Okay.
We did have several come in late. I don't know what the procedure is for that. Robert Dahl, Prize, David Prize. I just submitted him from the waiting room.
All right, one minute. So I'll double back then, and I'll ask Mr. Dahl, if you're here, do you have any questions for this witness?